You're listening to Contesting Wrestling, Minisode 29. We are, if you're a new listener, these minisodes are ones where we kind of go over little bite-sized episodes where we go over anything we might have missed from this week's episode, anything we've learned in the time since recording it, anything that's happened over the course of the week, wrestling-wise. Sometimes we'll talk about ourselves, because damn it, we're people too. We're not just your sound puppets making words to fill your lifetime. We're reflecting on our Mankind episode.
This isn't Westworld.
It's not. I haven't watched season 3 yet.
I'm sorry. You haven't watched season 3? I liked it. I'm glad it was only 8 episodes because it was really slow, but it pays off in the end. Very good.
I've watched 176 episodes of Star Trek Deep Space Nine in the last several weeks, and they all live inside me. It's great. Holodeck episodes are bad, but that's true of almost all Star Trek. And Vic Fontaine.
Which episodes?
The holodeck episodes are pretty much always bad in any Star Trek.
Those are the ones where those are the ones like that are alternate universe type episodes, right? Where someone like makes a fictional life for themselves on the holodeck.
Yeah, mostly, yeah. Where it's like they'll there's a whole episode where Data is like Sherlock Holmes in Next Generation.
I really like that. I show that episode to my students. It's really good for like appearance and reality, like skepticism, epistemology type stuff.
Isn't there one in Voyager where the Doctor makes himself like a family or something?
Well, that's different. All right, while Voyager is generally kind of whack, the Doctor character in Voyager is interesting because his whole deal was that he was a hologram, like an emergency program that was forced to suddenly become the ship's doctor, and he like developed a whole consciousness as time went on.
Right, he gave. I remember that he became sentient. Like the actual Doctor dies in the first episode, right?
Yes. Yeah, Voyager, a lot of big wasted opportunities. Voyager.
Okay, so Mankind.
Mick Foley, Mankind.
Mick Foley.
How we relate, Contesting Wrestling Mini, how we relate Star Trek to Mankind.
Right, so the Mankind episode that we did about his WWF run, even when he got signed, like Vince McMahon didn't think he was going to be the star that he was eventually became, and he did. He overcame just about everything that you could to make it.
So,
go on. He became the champion. Now go on.
Well, I have a big story to tell here. So
yeah.
I don't know. You want to get some stuff out of you wanted to talk about something.
Oh yeah. So like since all of this, we've watched Mick Foley do horrible things to himself and to others, and he had said, I believe he says this in his second book, Foley is Good, as named so because people would bring signs to the wrestling shows that said Foley is God. And being a rather devout Christian himself, he was always very uncomfortable with that. So he said, please just bring signs that say, Foley is good. So his second book was called Foley is Good. And in it, he said that he wanted future generations of fans that would get into wrestling, have it explained to them when he would come out, like, you see that guy, Mick Foley? Yeah. He was the sickest, most violent son of a bitch you've ever seen. And he wants the new fans not to believe you, because of how good he would eventually become. And he has completely succeeded in this, if you followed his exploits of the last, 10 years. He's done a ton of charity work, especially for the anti-sexual assault and rape charity RAINN. He got really into the idea of being Santa Claus. And he trained in the ways of being a Santa Claus, and at Christmas he will be Santa in places. And he made
including on Monday Night Raw.
He was Santa on Monday Night Raw once. He was hit by a car. Because if you're going to get Santa hit by a car, it might as well be Mick Foley, right? He made a documentary in 2014 called I Am Santa Claus, where he talked to a lot of career Santas that every year for decades would be Santa and told their stories. And, interesting guy.
This story actually kind of hits weirdly close to home for me a little bit.
Because your dad is Santa Claus, right?
Yeah, man. So, look, I am...
It's true. Evan's shoot name is actually Evan Claus.
Evan Kringle.
Look, we don't have time to go over the entire Santa Claus canon right now. So my dad, has a huge beard, and it's completely white, and he went to. I have a large beard because I'm just not going to give my money to big shaving, and I find it to be time consuming. And I'm bald now, so I gotta have something.
Boycott Gillette. Boycott Gillette.
It's so expensive and time consuming and wasteful. And it also, my skin is bad. It's a whole thing. So anyway, but he used to go to professional, not professional. He would go to beard competitions and stuff like that. I went with him to one, and it was I don't know. My dad's a great guy, but a lot of the guys there were assholes, and it just sort of was a little bit like a con cosplay kind of thing that was cool, and a little bit just like everything that's wrong with masculinity, made into a contest. And so,
it's only professional if you win, and they give you money.
If you make money, then it's professional. Yeah.
So he'll put on. He has never been a mall Santa. Thank fucking Christ. Because that's you have to be a weirdo if you're being a mall Santa. But he does he'll walk around wearing a Santa hat and just deal with people being it's Santa.
And somehow that's less weird.
Around Christmas, he doesn't do it in July. And it is, I guess, it is less. He's not inviting children to sit on his lap. He's just walking around and being Santa. But it's a drive that I don't understand. It is one of the. It's something that, my father and I are pretty close, and that's something that truly baffles me about him.
Well, if you're really curious, I've never actually watched it, but according to just a quick Google search, I am Santa Claus is on. It's on Prime Video, I think. I don't know. It's out there, and it's a documentary that explains why do you want to Santa Claus, which is. Yeah, it's an interesting question, I think.
I will have to check that out, yeah.
I have a personal story to tell here, too. And it's about something that Foley was sort of less successful with, I think. So, and a kind of disappointment that I had about him. I'm still a huge fan of his and of his work.
Mick Foley ran over Ben's dog. Repeatedly. And by dog, we mean son.
And by son, I mean, philosophical ideals or
no Ben's son was repeatedly run over by Mick Foley.
So I met Mick Foley a few times. The first time I met him was at South Street Seaport. WWE was doing some kind of event there, and he was very nice. He signed my book. He was very pleasant.
Which book was it, Ben?
This was Scooter.
Yeah.
This was his second novel, which I haven't actually read. I still have the signed book. It's about baseball. Yeah. I don't know. His first novel, Tatum Brown, I really liked a lot.
Yeah, it's sick. It's twisted as fuck. It's sick as a Cactus Jack barbed wire explosion match. Oh man,
exactly.
And by the time I read it, I already thought, oh yeah, Mick Foley, this nice guy. He had already convinced me, who had been a fan of his forever, that this can't be that bad. Oh no, oh, he learned one rule of writing, and it's torture your main character.
So here's the thing. I saw Foley as kind of the intellectual wrestler. And he is really brilliant. He's an incredibly smart guy, incredibly creative and thoughtful guy. As you said, he's fluent in German, which I didn't know before.
He's fluent in dog murder. Really cool. I'm sorry, I'll stop.
Son murder.
Right, son murder. I was trying to make it sound a little better, but yeah, we already established it's son murder.
So
he committed sonicide.
So there's a guy named Sam Ford who, as far as I know, and I apologize if there's a bunch of noise on the track. It is now 7 o'clock.
Yeah, it's 7. Yep. I'm getting it on my end too. If I knew a guy named Sam Ford, I would call him Sword. Carry on.
So Sam Ford, as far as I know, is the first person ever to teach a college class on professional wrestling.
Oh, cool.
And in 2017, I believe this was, he taught a class at MIT, of all places, on pro wrestling, and he invited Mick Foley to give a lecture. A lecture specifically for his class, and then also a public one at MIT. So I took the Chinatown bus down to Boston to attend Mick Foley's lecture.
And on the way to the lecture is where Mick Foley ran over Ben's son.
Yeah, okay, all right, yes. So I get there, really not in very good emotional shape because my son had just died. But, so I get to the talk, and Foley, his lecture was mostly telling a bunch of anecdotes, funny things that would pop the audience. The audience was all wrestling fans. And I thought, all right, that's fine. I guess maybe he said the really good stuff during the actual class. And, anyway, it was fine. But there was a Q&A. And so I asked my question. And I think he misunderstood where the question was coming from. Because my question was basically, what do you think wrestling would have to do in order to be accepted by the culture at large?
And also, why did you run over my son?
Right. Yeah. That's part of it. But yeah. So what would wrestling have to be like to be accepted by the culture at large? And I think, I don't know if I put it exactly like that, but that was what I was trying to get across. And I think he thought that I was talking down about wrestling. That I was like, what is wrestling going to have to be like in order to be culturally acceptable
and so
or something? I think is what
since you made him so angry, he went to the street where your son's body was still lying and ran him over again.
Bastard,
and then he put you in the
Yes.
mandible claw.
Which, to be
Started
fair,
wailing.
if I was trying to give a lecture about wrestling and then some snot-ass kid was just like, oh, what do you think wrestling would have to do to not be stupid? I'd be like, I'm coming for your son, bro.
So he got really defensive, and he was like, he was working with the WWE at the time. This was 2007, right? And he's like, well, I think we're actually doing a lot of things to branch out into culture at large. We've got Donald Trump on WrestleMania this year.
Oh, God.
And I'm like, oh, he doesn't get what I'm talking about, because for me, culture at large is like academic and intellectual culture, sort of, at least some sort of, right? At least to some degree.
Well, you were asking him this at MIT.
At MIT, right. What I meant is how can we get wrestling to be a subject that, is taught in more college classes, and is taken seriously as an art form. And that's what I was really saying.
Not just how can we get more mainstream eyes on the product.
Right, because I love wrestling. And I was thinking about Ring of Honor, and I know Foley had done stuff with Ring of Honor, and how at the time I felt like they were really progressing wrestling in interesting, creative, artistic ways. And he just really didn't get it, what I was asking him. And he got angry and defensive, and then just kind of went to the next person. And I was really disappointed by it at the time. And I think really what it is, maybe I was expecting a little much. I think this is reflected also in some complaints he made in his third book, The Hardcore Diaries, about how he was never accepted by literary culture. He was writing all these books, and they just kept seeing him as the wrestler. And he wasn't taken seriously as a writer. And despite being a New York Times bestseller and all that stuff. And I think, part of it is probably just that there was a stigma on him for being a wrestler. But I think part of it also is just that as smart, as intelligent, and as well-read, and as knowledgeable and creative as he is, he doesn't really understand intellectual culture and academic culture. He's not steeped in that. And that's no, insult to him. It's just one particular part of society that I happen to be very well versed in, given that I was raised in it.
And it's a culture that is hard to know if you're not. You tend to either be somebody who is completely surrounded by it, or you don't really know about it.
It's pretty insular.
Yeah.
And his response to me at MIT, and particularly his bringing up Trump as like an exemplar of like reaching into culture, really illustrated for me that kind of blind spot in his understanding of the world, which I think led to his disappointment at not being treated seriously as a writer.
He complained again, and Foley is good about the critical reception to Have a Nice Day, his first book. Not that any of the critics disliked the book. Almost all the reviews that he got were good. It's just that he didn't get any reviews from any serious review sources.
Yeah, none of them even bothered to read it.
The London Review of Books didn't review
right.
it.
Well, the New York Times didn't review it, and he thought, well, surely once it's a bestseller, the reviewers will at least take a look at it, and they didn't. They just completely dismissed it, and he had thought of it like other art forms, The worst album of the year that comes out will still get reviewed by Rolling Stone. Rolling Stone will be like, this sucks, these guys suck. 1 star, but with books, it's different. There's a whole hierarchy of authors. And yeah, if you're somebody who isn't primarily an author that's putting out a book that's seen as a commercial cash grab, the literary people will not take you seriously, which is one of the main reasons why he wrote the novel, which the literary people also didn't take seriously because most of them are snobs and don't want to let anybody in that does anything else except go on about literature all day.
But also, while I enjoyed it,
Yeah.
it's not really a high-level literary work.
I enjoyed it too, but it's it's kind of torture porny.
Yeah,
and it's not like he told a story that's never been told before.
I mean, in a sense, he did because he got into the history, the seedy history of professional wrestling.
That's
in a way
true.
that I think
A little
been told
bit
before.
It's not a wrestling book, but there's some wrestling in it.
And at least it's
thing
probably
that
a
he knows about,
reflection of somebody who has a lot more. At least it's probably a reflection of somebody who probably has a lot more firsthand experience with pain than most
Yes.
humans walking the planet. So,
for sure.
I have not read the book, and it sounds like the kind of thing I would not be into. But
No,
Probably not.
but there is something to be said, at least of write what you know, and.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, again, I'm not trying to take I enjoy all of his work to a certain extent. I just think that he misunderstands the way it fits into the larger world.
Sure.
Yeah.
So while we're talking about sort of some negative stuff, maybe we'll get back to some positive stuff.
Yeah, let's get back to the murder of Ben's son, the vehicular manslaughter.
Well, I was going to talk about a murder. I think we have to mention here one of the episodes of Viceland's Dark Side of the Ring this season, and we've mentioned this before, was about Jimmy Snuka and how he very likely
You mean definitely
murdered,
killed his girlfriend?
His girlfriend Nancy Argentino.
There is
It's
a Dark
pretty
Side of the
damn
Ring
clear.
being made about Ben's son. It's going to be in season 3.
So I just wanted to point out how Jimmy Snuka sort of looms large in the whole Foley story. He was the guy who he wanted to imitate. He saw him jump off the cage and then he jumped off his roof to imitate him and all that stuff. And also the very early days of ECW, Snuka was one of the main stars who kind of got them going. And he
was the first Eastern Championship Wrestling champion.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's kind of, it makes sense, I suppose. It's a little disturbing that hardcore wrestling has as part of its genesis a genuine murderer, or a apparently genuine murderer. So I thought that was something I should point out. I don't know really what to make of it.
That is an interesting thing.
Yeah.
Well, you want, a thing that I've always that's a thing that I try and point out to people is that people really like messed up extreme art in all its forms for a variety of reasons, because of the feelings that it can provoke and because it may take you to places in your own mind that you need something to push you there. But if you want extreme and sometimes disturbing art, you're gonna have to deal with extreme and sometimes disturbing artists, because that in many cases is where it comes from. I'm not justifying Jimmy Snuka killing that girl. But that's, but kind of even that aside, people who know him, people who knew him were like, oh yeah, Jimmy Snuka, nicest guy in the world. Never, ever drink with him because he becomes a monster.
We know people like that. Everyone knows someone like that. Honestly, they're the nicest person ever. But not even over drinking. They have one drink and they turn into a different, much worse person. We've all known that guy.
I mean, the dude looks terrifying in his promos.
He really does. You know, he had a lot of problems. You know, they say he was illiterate. He would order whatever the guy sitting next to him at lunch would order.
Oh yeah,
His
his wife.
read the menu.
His wife, for
Yeah.
most of his life, they interview her in Dark Side of the Ring, and she's
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, he was illiterate." Like
You know.
and she's a really interesting person because she seems like a very nice, kind of stable sort of person, and she just tolerated that shit for however long they were married. I don't know.
I didn't see that episode. I watched one episode of Dark Side of the Ring finally because I wanted to see the Brawl for All episode.
Oh,
We
yeah.
talked about it a little, and it's very entertaining. The Brawl for All episode. What a bad idea! But I think if we're gonna cover the Brawl for All, we should just watch that instead of trying to watch all of these fights.
Maybe watch like 2 of the fights.
Yeah, because this is, it's produced well. Evan would enjoy it because of the way it's produced.
I mean, I really think Evan should watch all the Dark Side of the Ring stuff, but yeah, we could.
Oh no, I have been meaning to watch Dark Side of the Ring. You keep mentioning, we've been talking about Dark Side of the Ring since the podcast started. You could say that Dark Side of the Ring haunts this podcast much the way Mick Foley is haunted by the ghost of young Hobarth Abelson.
Poor young Hobarth.
All right, so a couple other things about murder while we're on the subject, but in a lighthearted way. So
In a lighthearted way,
we
yes.
were wondering when Mankind lost for the first time. Like he lost to Shawn Michaels by DQ, but when he lost definitively, I don't know when his first pinfall or submission loss is, but I'm pretty sure his first actual definitive loss is to Undertaker in the Buried Alive match. That was what I could find.
Right. The Buried Alive match because he lost and then immediately just got out of the grave and then they buried the Undertaker.
Right. The Executioner came out.
Yeah, and the whole heel brigade had to come out because they realized it was a much bigger job than they thought it was.
This always
to get
happens with the
that
Undertaker.
much dirt. Yeah.
We got to watch that Yokozuna match eventually. Katie's been talking about how we have to do a whole Undertaker spotlight.
I was literally about to mention that. I
Yeah.
may as well mention it here. I'd be willing to craft that one with you, Ben, as my contesting wrestling magnum opus, because I already have several definite must watches on.
Let's do that.
Yeah,
I have
yeah, I'll get in the Slack.
Yeah, cool. We'll do that. That'll be awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Taker has had a lot of crazy spectacles.
It's going to have to be several parts, like the Foley one
at
was.
least-
My only
At least
request.
two.
Oh, yeah.
At
Yeah.
least two.
My only request is that we do the Undertaker versus the Undertaker.
Yes.
Yes,
That's
we would
gotta
also
be
have
the
to do
bad
it-
match for episode 1, right?
We would have to do that. We have to do the Undertaker, his Survivor Series debut, obviously.
We did that one.
We actually did.
We
that
already
once.
did that?
Yeah, we did it on a premium
It must not have been an episode. We've never done Undertaker versus Brock. I know that because we brought that up, and
we
that
haven't
has to
done
be
that
in there
one either,
somewhere.
Yeah. That could be
That
the
is to,
bad
it's
match
because
for
it's
second
not
one.
a good match, but it's too
Very
historical not
important.
to.
Absolutely. And we got to do,
Yeah.
of course. Well, anyway, we'll
Well, y'all
work
hash
it out.
that out.
Yeah,
after we
let's
do
not
that
go
with
too
the
far
mini.
into business secrets, everyone.
I have a couple of other things. One more thing Foley related. Doc, you talked in the episode about how the jump off of the roof, while it did get Foley attention from some promoters, wasn't what made him a star.
Right.
Similarly, a recent analogy to that, or a similar instance, is these Walmart wrestlers.
Yeah.
These guys who went viral for they work at Walmart and they just put each other through a bunch of tables and shit. And they did,
Yeah.
they clearly were trained to some degree and they did the moves
Yes.
really crisply and stuff. And they got booked on Joey Janela's Spring Break for this year, which never happened because
Which
of
never
COVID.
happened.
But even that booking, and a lot of people were complaining, oh man, they shouldn't get booked just for this one stunt or whatever.
Right.
Book them for the one stunt. That's not going to make them stars, right?
But you're saying that Joey Janela has to book only the most serious wrestlers? Right? The guy that went viral falling off the roof with Zandig? No. Janela knows. Janela is very aware of the brand of his Spring Break shows and what they mean to the wackiest fans in wrestling and other anomalies, and maybe you don't fit even though you deserve a better spot. Now, who deserves what? Go do something memorable. Come on.
Yeah.
Go do something memorable, like run a Pokemon Platinum Randomizer Nuzlocke on Twitch at Over Here Counting.
Speaking of fans, I also wanted to point out that at the end of that Rock Mankind match, where Rock just bludgeons him over the head with the chair again and
Right.
again, the crowd is not cheering. They are
No.
quiet. You know, and I think it's something I want to reiterate about wrestling, about most wrestling fans, is that they don't want to see wrestlers actually get hurt, actually get injured, actually, lose their livelihood because of brain damage and things like that. As soon as the violence gets real, they're going to check out, and by and large, they're going to be concerned for the welfare of the wrestlers more than anything.
Yeah, 100% agreed. I heard Jim Cornette observe once properly that the crowd reaction to Mick Foley changed when he got more over. And it went from when he did the big stunt, like a big pop, like, oh man, he did the big stunt, to like a more muted, wounded, like, oh, Mick, we don't want to see this happen to you anymore because we care about you. And Foley never knew how to deal with that, really.
Yeah.
He just thought he had to keep going big and hard, which is one of the reasons why he retired.
This attitude by the fans is evidenced by the "Please Don't Die" chant that originated with Paul London in Ring of Honor. But whenever they're about to do something that looks insanely dangerous, the crowd will chant "Please Don't Die." A couple of things I wanted to say about one of our recent minisodes, about the no crowd matches. Just because I don't know where else to talk about it.
Do you want to save this for the microsode that we do weekly, where we go over it's like 5 minutes long, and we go over the corrections for the minisodes?
Sorry, not about the minisodes. About our premium episodes.
Okay.
About recent premium
okay.
episodes. Sorry, yeah. One of them is I didn't mention Lance Archer's nickname, even though we talked about his crazy hair. He is the Murder Hawk Monster.
Murder Hawk Monster.
I think that's an important thing to have.
That's pretty good.
Out there.
How can you forget
I don't know.
that?
I don't know how I didn't.
You're fired. You are fired from this podcast.
So he is the Murder Hawk Monster. Other thing about Johnny Gargano's T-shirt, TJGW means the Johnny Gargano way, as opposed to DIY, not do it yourself or do it your own way. Do it the Johnny Gargano way.
That doesn't really stir anything in me.
No, me either.
No, yeah, he's a real slice of normal bread.
Johnny Gargano, here's the thing. I watch Johnny Gargano. He's incredible. He's clearly very talented, and I get why he's such a star, and then I just feel nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a guy who on the indies called himself the bee's knees and the whole shebang.
And it was one of those things where, like, how meta is he being? But if he never blinks or, like, nudges you, then he's not. He's just being generic.
He also, if it's the same guy that I'm remembering, yeah, it definitely is.
Yeah.
He's one of those guys who is in too good shape, I think.
Yeah.
He's like too... So if you drift too far into model or bodybuilder,
Right.
like I feel like Ryback was a different example of just like it's too much with your muscles, please, sir.
Knock it off a little bit.
I need you to dial that down a little. Johnny Gargano's a little too like, oh my God, go eat like some bread.
Yeah, have some
he
carbs.
has negative body fat.
Right.
Yeah.
You look at his legs; they're really kind of weirdly. They're all muscle.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing in between. I don't know.
You can
just muscle.
I try
on
not
bone.
to I try not to body shame people, but Johnny Gargano should be more ashamed of his body.
of his Adonis-like body.
Yeah.
Yes, of his
It doesn't really fit his
ideal.
character.
No, it's not. Yeah.
I think it's
What
really
is
the problem.
what is this character? Yeah.
Last thing about about that premium episode, it just occurred to me that Colonel De Beers and Paul Diamond being a match is funny, and it's a funny coincidence because De Beers being a diamond company.
Yeah.
I had to point it out. God damn it!
And you did.
Remember,
eating away at me.
all diamonds are blood diamonds.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, that's why they called him Colonel De Beers, I think, partially, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, so should we get our various plugs in?
I have one last quick thing.
Yes, Evan.
Okay, it's a bit of a scorecard. It's a scorecard update for everybody. So I went through. I looked at because I forget what matches we do. Okay, so yeah, I went through. I've got 10 matches that I would say I have enjoyed, that I would say I legitimately go, which is a very small percentage of the matches we've watched.
Yes.
Which is difficult. But I would say these are the I whenever we watch something that I like, I say, oh, it's sort of in this one echelon, and I can't really rank anything. So this is in no order whatsoever.
Okay.
These are there, or I'm going to give you I'm going to give you 9, and then there's one that I think you'll be surprised by at the end.
Oh.
All right, so Eddie Ray.
Yeah.
First one. Omega Ibushi.
Mm-hmm.
Cassidy Pack.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Joe Styles Daniels.
Classic.
Mm-hmm.
Omega Jericho.
Rivals.
Flair Rousey Lynch.
History. Yes.
The other Flair Rousey match.
Oh
Okay.
yeah, brutal.
Cassidy Starr.
The future.
Undertaker Edge. With the great Charles Robinson ref moment.
Oh yeah, the big slide.
And then finally, honestly, the Cena RVD ECW match.
Oh yeah.
That has more to do with just the intensity of the crowd.
So intense, yeah. Just
I was very affected by that match.
I'm surprised you didn't mention Shawn Michaels, Vince McMahon, because I remember you really liking that when we watched it.
I should watch it again. I did also really like that. This is also this list.
And
is
you haven't
subject to
mentioned
change.
any Shawn Michaels matches.
yeah, that's interesting.
Shawn,
interesting.
I feel like Shawn Michaels was an early favorite, and
Okay,
as we move
yeah.
on, it's not like I'm anti Shawn Michaels, but I have more of a taste for these guys.
You
Also,
have
I'm
a
going to say
wider palate
this
now.
list.
I remember you
This
liked
list
the
is
screw
subject-
job match a lot too.
Yeah.
Yes, I did. This list is subject to change. There's
Sure.
no other. I'm not bound by rules here.
Yeah, this is
is
how you
all
feel
good.
today. I know what you mean there. you know.
Exactly.
But yeah, those are all good matches. I understand the Cena RVD match. Yeah, the intensity, the crowd, if Cena wins, we riot. How Cena handled that very well, and how Rob Van Dam was coming in for his title and he took it. Just fantastic stuff. People still, that match is quite old now, and people really do still talk about it.
We did for a reason.
All right, well, my name, as usual, is Doc Diamondfire. You can follow me on Twitter at Dr. Diamondfire. It's at Dr. Diamondfire. You can follow me on Twitch at Doc Diamondfire. I've been Twitch streaming every night. I've been doing late night Super Mario Maker 2, which has been a lot of fun. And as far as the podcast itself goes, if you enjoy us, we have a Patreon where we put out a full-length episode every week on our Patreon for $5 a month. You get that at patreon.com/contestingwrestling. And if you just want to kick into the cause a little bit, for $1 a month, you don't get the premium episodes, but you do get all the regular episodes instead of on schedule, pretty much as soon as they're done being edited. So check that out if you enjoy the podcast. We would love to have you on.
And I am Ref Katie, aka Katie Bella. I am at Ref Katie on Twitter. Follow me, and I will tell you how much I love you. Which apparently is a great way to get followers. Just so you're aware. I'm at Over Here Counting on Twitch. I stream Pokemon Nuzlocke. I've been doing it for a while now. It's great. As of this recording, I have 3 to go until affiliate. Hopefully, I will have hit that by the time this comes out. And remember, with the Patreon, all proceeds from the Patreon do go to Ben's son's funeral costs. So please support us.
Oh, boy.
It's been really traumatic for him.
Sonless, childless, now, Dr. Ben Abelson can be found at Scribe Ben on Twitter and Instagram and YouTube. I've been meaning to make a playlist of some of my lectures that are around the YouTube sphere. So look forward to that. If you want to follow my YouTube, I'll be having some new stuff on there fairly soon. Other than that, if you're a Mercy College student, register for my philosophical psychology class in the fall. It'll be fun.
My name is Evan Burke. You can follow me on Twitter at Evan Burke, etc. That's Evan Burke, ETC. Whenever the fucking new webcam I ordered finally shows up, I will also be Twitch streaming.
Hell yeah.
Not also I'll talk about that more when it comes, but it'll probably be a lot of stuff from like the Dark Souls series. So I've been playing a lot of Death Stranding, which is alternately very stressful and very relaxing. That's I think how we're all feeling right now. Thank you for listening. This has been Contesting Wrestling. Follow us on Twitter at ContestingW. We love you.
Stay out of the ocean.
Stay out
Do
of the
not
ocean.
As always.
go in the ocean.
No, just no.
Especially the ocean of humanity right now.
Poetic. Poetic.